that's what leads to the great GPA. And that's what leads to the opportunities you're desperately seeking for after college. Have the courage to be you. It's what colleges want, and it makes for an awesome life, too. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. I wanted to just see a show of hands. How many of you in this room were at Julie's talk 2 nights ago at the San Mateo Performing Arts? Great, great. So for those of you who would like to listen to this again or share it, it is online. All you do is put in her name, TEDx Talk, Gun High School, and it'll show up. I've watched this several times, and every time I learn something new from it. She's also written a book called Raising an Adult, and it's the hottest book right now in the educational circles, so feel free to check that out as well. So without further ado, I'm going to start the panel discussion. I'm going to have all of our panelists come up here to the table, please. And the way we will structure this is we have some questions that were already submitted by some parents here in the Aragon community. Many were the board members and members of the Asian parent group. So I have some of those questions here ready to ask our panelists. And then after those questions are answered, we'll open it up to a broad Q&A from all of you. And we welcome questions from the parents here. We've got some students in the back, and I know they're busy doing homework, but feel free, students, to ask questions as well. We have a very experienced panel here, and we're fortunate to have them as a resource tonight. So don't be shy. Raise your hand and make sure that you jump into the conversation, okay? So let me start here. Actually, Stephanie, do you want to come sit here in the seat so you're not on the set? Yeah. So I will start off with Mr. Ellicott. We have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, do you think that the teenagers these days are more worried and stressed compared to the students that attended Aragon 4 years ago? Furthermore, how can parents encourage their teens to better manage their stress, such as limiting the number of AP and honors courses and the number of extracurricular activities?
So I've been here for 24 years, and I have to say that the amount of stress and anxiety has gone up immensely in those 24 years. You mentioned 4 years, but it's gone up even in the past 4 years. One of the reasons is a lot of our parents have gone to some pretty high-powered colleges, and they're expecting their kids to go to those colleges as well, wherever college you went to. And you all know that the colleges are getting harder and harder to get into. But as was said in the video, there are more than just Stanford and Cal and UCLA. There's hundreds and hundreds of colleges. So don't be, all of our kids can't go to Stanford. We get 2 or 3 per year. That's our max, is 3 kids per year. So the other 400 seniors have to go somewhere else, okay? And there's also no harm in going to community college. Half our kids go to community colleges. Do we have any community college graduates here in the audience? We usually have a few. My own wife went to community college for about 10 years. She finally got her BA after 10 years. There's no harm in going to community college. I've had parents say to me, my son or daughter will not go to community college. There's no harm in community college. There's no harm in going to a state school or a private school. So there's more than Stanford and UCLA, because those schools are getting harder and harder to get into. So there are many schools to consider. And you asked the question about limiting AP classes. I had a parent last year in 8th grade say to me, how many AP should my daughter take in 12th grade? So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that question? How many, 4 years from now, how many AP should they take? What's wrong with that question? Who can volunteer? I need a brave parent. They have to make it the first 3 years, right? I mean, 9th grade, 10th grade. So my answer was, let's just take it year by year. You can't say I'll take 5 or 6 APs, but it was a dumb question, right? It's a dumb question. So plan it year by year, and every year we meet with kids and we help them decide how many APs they should take per year. For some kids, 1 is too many. I've got a senior now taking 6. 6 is not too many for her. I don't recommend 6, but she's getting straight A's, she's doing fine. So we have to go individually, how much stress and how many APs your kid should take. And that's pretty much the questions, right? Yeah.
So, Mr. Ellicott, we have a second question for you. How do teachers or counselors at the school detect that a student is facing challenges beyond just monitoring their grades? In the current competitive environment, some teens have stellar academic, sports, and arts records, but yet they are suffering in silence. What can parents do to change the current climate?
The hardest part is the question is suffering in silence. We've got a lot of kids suffering in science. They are getting straight A's. They're doing 3 sports. They're doing activities, but they're hurting inside. As the video said, there are kids who. It's funny because this time of year I'm writing recommendations for colleges for kids, and I'm writing for kids who have straight A's, but there's nothing there. Like there's no soul there. There's no. How do you say it? There's no character, right? I have a college, another friend of mine calls them wallpaper. There's no character there. So we're trying to build character in our kids. And if you're seeing your kids losing weight, for instance, or not sleeping well, or not eating well, or being irritable or depressed, you should tell a counselor, tell somebody here at school. I've had parents come to me and they say, my kid's been suffering for 6 months or a year. What can I do about it? Don't wait 6 months or a year. If you see changes in behavior and eating habits, come tell us.
Okay, this next question I will direct towards Stephanie from Star Vista. This was submitted by a parent. What are the signs I can notice as a parent to give me a sense that my teen is struggling beyond what's expected for a teen of their age? How can parents best intervene if we discover our teens are experiencing true anxiety or depression?
Thank you. And please, any panelists, join in. So the first question is, what are some of the signs that a parent can notice? I think what your counselor mentioned is looking at changes in your child and their behavior, and especially around sleep and eating and hygiene habits, and really paying attention to changes. And something that we talk a lot about is comparing them to themselves and not to other kids, or not to what we think that they should be, but to our young person, and seeing who they are and how they're changing. And there's also performance in school. Their grades are going down. They seem, they just seem more distracted or worried or stressed than they used to. And really paying attention to those things and little signs that they give you, and having a conversation. It never hurts to sit down and just ask how they're doing, what they're feeling. I think that we have to be, as adults and parents, comfortable to bring up the topic with our kids, because they're worried that we're not going to be able to handle it. That if they drop a hint about how they're feeling, that we as parents will be too worried or too stressed, or not be able to sort of help them. And so they, in some ways, are protecting us from their own stress, as well as not wanting to disappoint them. So I think it's just starting the conversation, and not minimizing it. If your kid seems really stressed out about a test or a date, or missing out on a party, and it seems minimal, but it can be so significant to them. And so their ability to cope with those stress is what's important. So really listen and validating, and then reaching out to supports, whether it's an adult at the school. Star Vista has hotlines a parent can call to just check in, to see what's going on. There's crisis hotlines, but just to have somebody to talk to and to connect your kid to.
Okay, Stephanie, I'll give you another question here. You feel like you're in a beauty pageant?
I feel surrounded by people who know a lot of information too.
So this question came in. What do I say to my teen if I'm concerned that they are thinking about hurting themselves or others? By asking them directly, will it make the situation worse? Okay. Make sure you hold that.
Oh yeah, I'm not very good at microphones.
I'm sorry.
Like this. I think we would all, I'm sure, agree is that if your child or your child's friend or another child in the community mentions that they're feeling like they're hopeless, they're depressed, they're wanting to kill themselves, there's no point, they're wanting to hurt somebody else, that you ask them directly about it. And say, or I'm noticing that you seem really upset and I want to know if you've ever thought about hurting yourself or killing yourself, and really just being direct. And it's hard and it's scary. And there's something in our culture, society, that if we bring it up, we're going to plant the idea in their head, or we're going to validate that thought or put it out there for them. But our kids, everyone, thinks about mortality, and our youth are thinking about it all the time, and we want to intervene before it gets too late. And most people, when they're contemplating killing themselves, give out some kind of signs, and we have to be adept enough to pick it up and ask them directly. And again, you don't ask in a way like, you're not thinking about killing yourself, are you? Or you wouldn't do that, right? You wouldn't do something like hurt your parents, like kill yourself. Because which you don't realize what you do all the time, and just really openly say, we love you, we don't know what to do, but we want to help you. Have you thought about hurting yourself? And let's figure this out together, but to really be direct. Because there's, the time when people try and actually kill themselves is very small. There's this whole time before when they're feeling depressed and they're exploring ways to just sort of end the pain, and so that's when we have so much opportunity to get involved. And during that time, they're thinking about all those different options. So it's really great to just bring it up and acknowledge it.
Now, did anyone else on the panel want to add to that at all? I don't want you to feel like this is just one question and you can't jump in. So if anyone would like to add, I think Mr. Alcott, you actually had added something to that in a conversation.
With you?
Yeah.
What was it?
Brilliant.
We have a lot of conversations.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it.
Okay, the next question is for Nargis from Star Vista. Nargis, how do we teach our teens to self-identify feelings of depression and anxiety?
I think it's really important to have the conversation around mental health and mental wellness regularly, so that it doesn't become the kind of thing that we're only speaking about when there's something wrong. So the same way we're constantly talking about good eating habits, we hear about it on TV, we see it on shows, people talk about eating habits, exercise, and it's a part of our everyday lives and conversations with our teens. It's really important for mental health and mental wellness to be treated the same way, because if we're constantly talking about it, it really creates an opening for people to be able to talk about it when they feel like things aren't going well for them, and it really reduces the stigma and the sense of shame or negative feelings somebody might have toward themselves if they're starting to feel different. So I think that's the first step around helping teens be able to speak up if they're having any difficulties, and I think that's a barrier that a lot of teens identify when we ask them, so what kept you from asking for help earlier? And also kind of normalizing that a lot of people experience mental health challenges throughout their lives. So by the time we're adults, 1 in 4 of us have at some point experienced the mental health challenge. So by saying that, we're giving everyone permission to speak up when they're feeling like maybe I am one of those people. Maybe I'm more sad than I can control. Maybe I'm more worried than I can control. So really, if we're talking about it in terms of normal human emotion and things that most of us go through at some point in our lives, we're giving everyone permission to have the conversation, which usually really helps.
I thought of something. Over the years, I've sat with many students who have contemplated suicide, and one question I always ask them is, if you were to leave the earth, who would miss you? And it's rare that they say no. When they say nobody, then I know they're serious about being suicidal. But quite often I say, who will miss you? Who would you hurt? They say their parents. And that's the thing that keeps them around. So my point is, have a good relationship with your kids so they don't want to harm themselves, because they know that if they do, they'll be hurting you as parents or their siblings. So just maintain that good relationship.
Nargis, a parent asked, how do I deal with a situation if my teen tells me in confidence that a friend is having mental health problems?
So I would say it's it's a great start if your teen feels comfortable talking to you about this. Like, it really shows the strength of your relationship if your teen is coming to you and bringing up a friend's thoughts or difficulties with you. I would say it depends on kind of the seriousness of what's going on with the friend. A lot of times, if it's a matter of somebody being in danger of harming themselves, I would say we can't really keep it in confidence. And I know your friend's going to be upset, but we're going to have to get some help. So if it's a matter of safety, safety always overrides confidence. An upset friend is better than a friend who's seriously harmed. So we really want to keep that in mind. When it's other issues and they might think that their friend might need some sort of help, sometimes I help them identify people at school that they could talk to, and maybe the parent or the student can talk to the friend about, well, there's this adult and I know that they would be able to help you and I'm worried about you. So really coming from a caring place as opposed to making them feel like they're in trouble. So I think the biggest concern sometimes students have about speaking about school is they don't want to feel like they got in trouble for having a mental health kind of concern. So really being like, I can go with you to the counselor's office if you want, I can introduce you to the school counselor, and kind of trying to get them started on the route to getting some support.
Okay, Dr. Wong. A generation ago, sports and other extracurricular activities such as music helped to decrease stress. But these activities have become very competitive. So what are your suggestions?
On how to decrease stress? Oh, okay. I mean, I think I hear this a lot from the students I work with where, activities, even like, anything like, they're so involved with doing these activities for the sake of beefing up their resumes that it's no longer offering them any joy or pleasure. So I think sort of what Dr. Julie said was, if finding something that you really are, passionate about, that gives you that energy, that gives you that spark. And it could be different for everyone. I mean, I think everyone has to dig a little bit deeper and find out something that really gives them pleasure. I mean, it could be, it could be yoga, it could be meditation. Maybe for some students, it's, music a lot. But I think we all have to dig a little bit deeper to figure out what really speaks to us, and it could be different for everyone.
And that it doesn't necessarily have to be a competitive.
Exactly. It doesn't need to lead to, I need to put it on my resume. I need to excel at it. I need to have something to show for it. Like, I can just enjoy it. I don't need to actually have something to show for it.
Now, you mentioned yoga and meditation and such. So this leads into the next question. What are some healthy ways that teens can manage or ease their stress?
I think first they should eat. I honestly see a lot of hungry kids, very hungry. I mean, they come to see me around 4 o'clock after school, and some of them tell me they have not eaten most of the day. And I'm like, what? And so I would say, making sure they really have a good sense of how to feed their body and their brain. And otherwise, I feel like these kids are go, 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 but they don't stop to eat. They really ignore their bodies, their signs. Like, they don't really know how to read their bodies anymore. So I think certainly nourishing themselves, and also listening to when their body is not doing well. I mean, if they're tired, they need to, take a break. They need to listen to their bodies. But I feel like a lot of kids now, there's so much pressure to go, 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 that they really don't even know how to take care of themselves. I mean, they're depending on us parents to take care of them. But I think the best thing we can give them is the tools to self-care and recognize when they start needing help. So, but I think it's as core as, like, what are you putting in your body?
Now, I believe they started a yoga class here, correct, Mr. Ellicott?
This year we didn't have enough kids sign up, but we hope to have it next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have they started mindfulness here?
No.
Not yet? Because in the Sequoia district, we've actually started mindfulness and yoga, and the kids who have benefited from this just rave about it.
Barbara, you want to
Barbara?
talk about that?
Yeah, we have,
We have a group that's coming in to teach our all 10th grade classes yoga within the PE classes. So if you have a child who is in 10th grade PE, they're probably getting yoga every Friday, so you could check in with them, and they do the mindfulness practice within the class. And then I teach the elective class, which is only for juniors and seniors, but we need at least 35 to get that class going. So we've had it a couple of years, but yeah, we do have another outside group now coming in to teach yoga to all classes. It just started, so it'll go, this will be the 3rd class tomorrow. And then they'll have another 3 after that. Yeah.
When does the class occur? You said,
During their PE class, sophomore PE classes.
but from the outside, like the, you said
So
you're having a group come in to
Yeah,
teach?
they come in and teach, and
During
there's
PE.
2 instructors that come during PE classes into our yoga studio.
Great.
It's fabulous. I think in 5 years, schools are gonna look very different. You know, it's gonna, we'll have these resources just as a regular part of the curriculum. Okay, thank you, Dr. Wong. Ms. Silverstein. Our teens are unknowingly addicted to electronic devices, video games, and social media. Given that their frontal lobes are not fully developed and they have trouble resisting these distractions, what strategies would you suggest for parents?
That's a good one. Start early and young. Early and young, we structure their environment. And so as parents, we can have screen-free time at home. It can be dinner time, it can be reading time, game time if your kids are younger, but making sure that the devices, there are times throughout the day where there are no devices. Meal times, game times, after bedtime, there's no devices in your room so that you don't get up every time it pings or the text comes in. So setting those parameters early and enforcing them throughout. And the earlier you set them, the easier it is to enforce them in the later years. But definitely, and we as adults too put our phones away at meals. We also put our phones away at bedtime so that we're modeling for our children that this is the way to self-care. And it's part of self-care, which everybody has mentioned, and I think a big part of that is integrating it into our week with our kids, saying, when is your me time? When do you take care of yourself? How do you decompress? When are you setting that up for yourself? How often do you think you need that time? And if so, every day, when is that coming into your planner? As if it were homework or an activity or school.
Now this was, oh, go
Before
ahead.
you move on,
Here.
it's beautiful as it was said, but as now they are young adults. What we can do now that they are addicted to the games.
It's definitely, they're already on it, and it's definitely much harder, but that's when a family meeting can come into play to say, you know what? Mom and Dad have been thinking about this, and we feel like we need more family time, more connection time, we all need less screen, however you want to phrase it, and to say going forward, we're gonna have our meals from 6 to whatever, and that is gonna be a screen-free time. None of us are gonna have screens in our bedrooms, and kind of saying, studies have shown, we've been thinking about this, and this is gonna be a new policy in our family. I mean, it's gonna be much, much harder now that, like you said, that they're older, but it's gonna be a conversation and a negotiation, right? What can work for you, okay?
That's what I was looking for, negotiation.
It's definitely a negotiation, so, you know, is 9 o'clock too early to take the screens away? What would work for you? 11 o'clock, well, I think that's too late, and then it's a back and forth to talk about where you're gonna compromise. And maybe weekends look different than weekdays and that sort of.
Thank you.
And for those of you who were at Julie Lithgott-Haim's talk 2 nights ago, she brought up that the 2 factors that were most important for success in becoming an adult were, number 1, being surrounded by love, and 2 was chores. And so everybody kind of pulled their hair out, and she said, I know, I've been there. We didn't start chores early enough either. And so the question's always, well, how do you start chores when they're already 14 years old?
That's a little late. I saw my kid 9.
But for those in the audience who didn't start, she said, you just have to say to them, we're starting. And so it is much harder to go back.
Long journey, very long journey.
Right, it's a long journey and a lot of negotiation, as you said. Okay, great. Now, we did touch upon this question a little earlier in a response. How do we as parents encourage or teach our teens to take better care of themselves, especially in the areas of sleep, nutrition, and exercise?
Number one, we model it. And number two, we structure it from early on. That exercise, eating right, and sleep are all very important. And if homework is running late, it's reaching out to your school potentially and having a meeting to talk about with the school counselor or various teachers. You know, my child is up till 2 in the morning doing homework. What can we do differently? And putting strategies in place when enough is enough. And I think most teachers, if you sat at the table with them and said, my child is up till 2 o'clock, would say, that's not working, and how are we going to do it differently? And so it's again, bringing in all the people that have kind of the ability to structure the child's life and figuring out how to go forward with that.
So it's a team approach.
Absolutely. It's always involving the school and the teachers and the counselors to talk about things that are coming up. But only you know what you're seeing at home. And the teachers can't possibly know. As you said, they come in, they've got straight A's, they're involved in activities, everything looks great, but then they're falling apart at home. And only you know that. And so the teachers would need to know that.
Okay, Christine Tam from Adolescent Counseling Services. Now, Adolescent Counseling Services provides mental health services down in Palo Alto, and they also provide services at Woodside High, which is one of the high schools that I work with. So Christine is here as a Palo Alto expert as well. This may be, again, some of these questions cross over with prior questions and answers, but how do parents support their teens in achieving a healthy balance between being a kid, in quotes, and yet also developing the skills to be a productive adult?
That's a very good question. I think the theme, just from hearing about the different questions and the answers that people have given, and what came to my mind really is to start young, to help your children understand that there are different areas of your life that you need to develop as a child and as a human being. So in our competitive sort of academic setting, it is a great emphasis to develop our cognitive skills, to be smart and to be able to perform well in school. But we also don't want to neglect the other areas of development that is also very important to children and for human beings in general, including physical wellness and then the mental wellness, which is what we're talking about today. So in working with your children, starting them young, and for them to understand that understanding their internal state is just as important as understanding cognitively, whether they're good at math, whether they're good at reading. See those things as equal. It will help your children further success in life, having the balance of those two different things.
Now, this is kind of an extension of that last question. Some parents and students may feel that the goal is to prevent all stress. But since we know that some level of stress can actually be productive, how do we help our teens find that right balance, recognizing that some stress can actually be healthy?
Yes, that's absolutely true. We don't want to protect, as much as parents want to protect our children from all harms and all hardship. It is very true that having a certain level of stress is very important as they develop it into adulthood. And in the video, I was just remembering that, you know, they're all going to fail. As much as we hate to hear it and as much as we hate to accept it, they're all going to fail at some point in their lives. And when they fail, what skills have they learned in order to come back up from the failures, right? So going back to the question about finding that balance, it is tricky, and I think the important thing is for you to really know your children, to really know what their limits are, but at the same time not coddle them so that they don't have to experience any challenges or difficulty. Again, with knowing your children, it's really about starting young, building that relationship with them, and it's beyond knowing their grades, right? A lot of what I've seen oftentimes is that a lot of parents think that, oh, their children is doing fine at school, their grades are great. I don't have to think about anything else that's happening. And that's a huge mistake. As we all know, kids can be doing really well at school, but they can be struggling in other ways. So know your children beyond their grades, and know what their limits are. And to support them when they need, when they're hitting their limits, but also giving them the space to fail and to experience difficulty.
Let's see, Mr. Ellicott, another question for you. How do parents best communicate with the school, teachers, and coaches about supporting our teens' mental health?
Probably the best way would be to contact their counselor. We've got one counselor for each grade level. I have the sophomores. Trish Descay is the senior counselor. Stacy Becker-Kim is the junior counselor. And Monica Busby is the freshman counselor. So if you're seeing difficulties with their, with anything, their academics, their emotional state, contact their counselor. And then if need be, we can arrange a meeting with you and your child, or a teacher meeting. But that's probably the best way. Also, every teacher has an email address and a phone extension. So if you're seeing, if you're watching School Loop and you're seeing decreased grades, failing grades, you can contact the teacher by email, and I can set up a parent-teacher-student meeting also. So don't wait too long.
Now this one I'll just kind of open up to the whole panel, and then we'll open it up to the audience. In more serious mental health cases, what are some of the resources available to our teens in this community? So I'll just.
So I was at a meeting the other day, and they were talking about the San Mateo County Youth Commission did the Adolescent Needs Survey, where they surveyed teens in high schools all over San Mateo County, and they asked them, one of the questions they asked them was, what's your number one stressor? And 70% identified school as their number one stressor. So out of all of you sitting in this room, some of your teens might be experiencing stress. So it's totally, it's the majority of them. So that's just something to keep in mind. We have a couple resources that are available to everyone. Star Vista has a number of programs geared toward adolescents and families. One of the ones that I have some cards for on the table in the back is the Child Adolescent Hotline. And on that hotline, anyone concerned about a youth or a teen themselves can contact us to talk to a clinician, to kind of talk through what's going on, maybe get some resources in the community, or just kind of get some advice. Some people just call because they need some support. They had a rough day. They're not quite sure what was the best way to handle it. We also have a text line on that line, 567-KIDS, which is really has been a great way for teens to get support for themselves. Or as somebody earlier, one of the questions asked about teens who are worried about other teens, we sometimes get teens who ask for resources for their friends on that line. So I really wanted everyone to know about that. And we also have a 24-hour crisis line that anyone can call about anything. If in the middle of the night something's going on, if an argument kind of gets out of hand and you just need some support, you can definitely call that line. And there's a peer-to-peer chat room that we run. It's a website, and we have trained teen counselors who come to our site, and they're available after school hours online, onyourmind.net. If ever your teen kind of needs someone to talk to. I think a big piece of being supportive is sometimes knowing that they're not going to be able to talk to their parents. So being open to that and being able to be the one who provides the next best thing, and being like, well, if you don't feel comfortable talking to me about this, I want to make sure you have someone to talk to. And that could be a counselor, someone at the school, it could be one of these resources. And the other question I was asked earlier was about if child's friend is kind of in trouble, and one of the things that has come up before is if your child's friend like tells them, I'm gonna run away. So I want everyone to know that we do have a house in Redwood City. It's called Your House South. And if you ever know of your children's friends who are thinking about running away, they can go stay there, and it's a safe place and it's free. And we provide family counseling so they could be safely reunited with their families. We want to make sure teens who are running away aren't ending up kind of without a place to go. So it's a good resource for all of you caring parents to know about in case somebody in your child's community ends up in a situation where they don't have a place to go. And if you forget any of these things, you can always call one of the child and adolescent hotline, be like, somebody was talking about something that night, and we'll help connect you. So don't feel like you need to hold all the information in your head. It can be kind of overwhelming. Does anyone else want to? Yeah.
So I'm from Adolescent Counseling Services. Currently, we are providing services in the Redwood City area for the schools and also Palo Alto schools. But we are actually expanding our services up into the San Mateo area. We won't be, at least in the near future, working directly with the schools, but we are moving our offices up in Redwood City. And we do provide after-school counseling for anyone who is in this area.
And I did want to mention too that Star Vista is present in my district, the Sequoia district, at Menlo Atherton High School, and they have a full program there that provides support to the entire student body. And so we're very lucky to have all of this support in that district. So with that, I do want to mention at the end of this session, our experts will stick around a little bit and answer questions that may not have been addressed in the group. We have some tables in the back with materials, right, from both ACS and Star Vista. And so if we don't get through everything in the next 15 minutes, just know that they'll still be here. Okay, so we're going to open it up to all of you, and the students are in the back, right? Students, are you awake? Okay, hello. So I'll just pass the mic to whoever would like to ask a question, and we'll just kind of pass it around this audience.
So, what everybody has said about the stress that school actually gives to the teens and youth are very, very serious. Let me read a text that I got from my 20 years old attending Southern. And I think this is very important for all parents to know that yes, there are schools out there, but you guys also have to consider the mental health of your kids, whether they're able to move or not from home. It says here, I'm tired, Mom. I don't have it in me to fight back anymore. I haven't for a while, and now I feel like when I try to fight, it is so overbearing. It is so much, it's futile, but I just want it to stop. It hurts, I'm tired. It's back, and I fought it in September, and I fought it in October, and now I just don't have the strength anymore. I feel so weak, so drained. I want so much just to give up. It's a tough one for our kids out there. It's tough, and all we want to say is come home. Because you want to protect them. You want to be with them. But at the same time, you have to let them know you're gonna make it through. You're gonna make it through, and I'm gonna be there next to you, even if it have to be through a FaceTime or through, a phone or something. You want your kids to succeed, but at the same time, you want them to give the strength of words in your love. And I listen to each of you, and I have role model health and sleep and every single checklist as a parent, but somehow things happen in life. You can't control everything. So what is the best way for us to do as a parent to have a successful kid? Yes, it's to give them the independence they need, the tools, but at the same time it's the support and love.
but many times I don't know what to do. I don't. I really don't. So what are your suggestions? I just read the text. Please give me advice because I'm dying. I'm struggling as a mother. We're struggling as a family. She's gonna graduate in 2 more semesters, but she has gone through a lot of deep sorrows.
Let's be realistic.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Let's be realistic.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing that, and I think we were all very touched by what you shared and how raw it was. So thank you. I feel very grateful.
I'm screaming for help.
So I think we'd love to check in with you too afterwards and talk. I mean, I think
No,
definitely
I think
raise
it's
some.
for everybody
Yeah.
to learn this.
As well. I talk about it now, but also just in terms of making sure that there's some individual things that we could talk about. But it's wonderful that your child is talking to you, and I think that, like Narja said, that's something you should really celebrate, and that we're all here to, because we're trying to help and do the best we can. I think it's okay to let your kid know that you love them and you don't know what to do, and what do they think that you can do. To talk to them about how much you love them and you just want them to be okay. And it's, whatever that means, and you don't have to have the answers. Sort of practically, I would really want to make sure that she was connected with somebody at the school, a mental health person at the school. Because there's definitely some things in there that are really concerning, and I'd want to ask her directly, if she was thinking about killing herself, and more about what she was sort of thinking when she said some of the things like I don't want to go on, but really connecting her to services there, and having someone kind of sit down and do an assessment with her about where she is, because she sounds just like she's trying so hard, and like and you love her so much, and I'd want to make sure she got all the support that she deserves.
A couple of hours later, I checked on her back again, and she goes, "Mom, I just wanted to vent out."
Good.
So we have to be prepared when the kids vent out.
She vents out too many times and too many nights. I don't go to sleep. But as a parent, I'm a psychologist, and sometimes we're the wrong person to help our kids. So, and it's very interesting because when she goes and asks for help, she turns the therapy into she's the one that leading the therapy instead of letting the professionals do that. But it's because she's been reading too much since little. So sometimes that's a problem too. And this is not a game for our kids. And I'm here with all the parents because I'm a mom. And those words, to me, it's like I want to kill myself. If you do not stop me, I'm going to kill myself.
I wanted to mention too that we are running short of time, and I want to make sure we get to some other questions. But for those of you who would like to continue this dialogue, please leave your name and email at the back with Angela on and her team, and we'll provide an opportunity to continue the discussion. Okay?
Yeah, I just wondered if you can talk a little bit about what kind of a growth arc to expect from being a freshman to graduating from high school and starting college. You all talked about the importance of having a relationship where the child can turn to you, but you also want your child to be developing so that when they go off to college, they're not always needing to turn to mom, right? So what should you be doing? What progress should you be seeing?
Start here. So that's a really good question. So yes, being aware that your children are gonna separate from you, I think is the first step. Knowing that they're not going to turn to you every step of the way, and that's normal. And sometimes that's actually pretty hard as a parent to see what's wrong with my kid. They're not talking to me anymore. So yes, that is definitely a normal part of adolescent. And also coming from, I want to speak a little bit to the cultural perspective too, because I know that this is in particular to the Asian parents, and it's held by the Asian parents group. Knowing the developmental cycle of your children in this culture is going to be important. Our expectation as Asian parents of what a teenager looks like may be very different from what a teenager looks like here in this country, in this culture. So that's something I want to help bring awareness to, in particular to the Asian parents. And then as far as what to expect, yes, it's absolutely true that you will expect your child to make decisions on their own, to kind of try to solve problems on their own. And it's actually a healthy process. And that really brings back to the kind of relationship that you foster from the young age. When they do get to the adolescent age, they do want to solve problems on their own. They look to their peers. But if you are having a positive, connected, securely attached relationship with your parents, when things do get bad, the belief is that they will come back to you and that you will be in tune with them to know that there's something going wrong and that you need to investigate.
I just want to say to the parent, like, not to worry, but what your daughter is asking you is to help her out. She might be loaded with classes. You know, you might want to talk to her, and maybe she can get only few. You never know if it's a boyfriend that is breaking her apart. So pretty much you need communication. You need to express to her that things are replaceable, but humans, they are not. So just tell her, you know, to be open to you, and you both can go and get help from anybody here or out there. I mean, they have links from here to there. Or if you have to bring it over, it's best if she can have a break, and once she gets settled, she can resume whatever she wants to accomplish.
Quick show of hands. How many of you here in the audience have college age teens from young? Okay, so we have quite a bit of experience in the audience. That is another option, is to really reach out to those who have been there, done that, and it's helpful to know who's been down that road already. There was a hand up in the back. Let's see, was it someone up here?
Should we talk about the suicide news with our kids? So like a couple years, last few years, the gun had happened, we heard. Should we talk about those news with our kids? How to?
I think that's a great question, and I think whenever something happens in the community, even if it's the immediate community or somewhere out in the world, it's kind of a great opener. Because even if your student or your child doesn't decide that they really want to talk to you about it, by you bringing it up, it shows them that you're willing to talk about this difficult topic. So if it ever comes up for them in the future, they're significantly more likely to approach you about it. Just the fact that, let's say you're driving them home from school, being like, oh, I heard on the news today that this tragic event happened. I was thinking about your school community. Are people talking about it? So very gentle door opener, but it really shows I can talk about the hard stuff. And even if in the moment they're like, oh no, nothing, like I didn't hear about it, I don't care, they will always remember your willingness to talk about this. And if in the future another event happens, or they are themselves thinking about it, or one of their friends are, they're significantly more likely to bring it up to you, because they know that, like, oh, my mom can have this difficult conversation. They're not gonna overreact if I bring up the word suicide. Because sometimes that's the worry of our students, is that their parents aren't going to be able to handle it. So any opportunity to talk about it really shows them that I can have the hard conversations.
I also wanted to quickly add that one suggestion in a situation like Palo Alto's is to really emphasize in your discussions with your children, not only what happened, but the positive way a community responds to a tragedy, and to really focus on the support and the resources that people tapped into. So you flip it, instead of just talking about the negative, to also focus on the positive, okay?
You had a question?
This is a question to all of the panel. What are things that we could institute here at Aragon, and not just Aragon, but the other schools in our district, which would bring more knowledge about mental health issues, more resources about mental health issues to our campuses? So for example, this is the first I ever heard of Star Vista, and yet it seems like it's an excellent program, that it's something that all the students should know about. I mean, if I was to say Star Vista to someone I just pulled aside on campus, I would think they should know about it. So how can we at this campus and the other campuses get that kind of information, and what can we do to make it more readily available for our students?
So we do have an education program, and we have someone whose job is to go to high schools and do classroom presentations on mental health and what mental health challenges might look like. And she's actually been to Aragon already this year. One of the teachers invited her, and she did make presentations all day to her classroom. I forget which teacher it was, but we. Okay, so yeah, the health teacher. So we do provide those resources, and it's available to any school in San Mateo County, as long as the school is providing the time, and we do always table at the health fairs as well. So we are available if there's ever any opportunity to talk to students or parents or anyone who's interested in learning more about mental wellness. We're willing to have the conversation.
I could add just an observation from working in the Palo Alto district, and also obviously mental health has become much of a hot topic, especially in the last few years. And what I think actually has been really positive coming out of that is that there's a lot of student activity that is promoting mental wellness from the student level. So there are students starting clubs, they're called stress busters, and getting together and putting on different, we had a student at Poly who just organized a yoga class in the middle of the quads in one of the days. So I think it's great. I don't know how you would kind of instigate that level of student, initiation, but I think coming from the students themselves would be a great way of educating, the student body about mental wellness.
Now, I'm looking at the clock. We're a few minutes over. Ms. Kurtz, did you want to?
I wanted to add, Steve, do you want to mention? I can do it. The Youth Services Bureau, which is what we use for our mental health counseling here in the district. And we have a counselor who is with us all day, Joe Toomey. He's our school safety advocate. We've had one for the last 7 or 8 years, good spare. And the students know about him. The counselors go out at the beginning of the year. They go out and we do what we call road shows. And part of what we're talking about is safety, and safety is mental health. And so we talk about the services that they have. They've got the counselors they can talk to. Joe is available, and they know where. We oftentimes do tours with the freshmen to point out where his room is. There is a black box that's around in our office. And if students don't want to come, they want to do something anonymously, whether it's to share about themselves, share about a friend, whatever, it's a place that they can go. Star Vista comes into all of the health classes, so every student that takes health starts off in their freshman year. I think the problem with our health classes is, honestly, We do it freshman year, and I think every one of our juniors and seniors needs another health class if we could do it again. Maybe not a full semester, but if we could do something like a short program. So oftentimes with our seniors, when we get them together at the end of the year and they're not testing or doing those other activities, we bring in speakers to talk to them, because they are then getting ready to go off to college and dealing with many of the issues from alcohol, drugs, sex, everything with the going, and the stress of just going to school. So we're trying to do what we can. We're not there. I think the other thing that I want to mention, as a principal, every single individual that works at a school site is a mandated reporter. What that means that is, if a student comes to any individual here at the school, indicates that they're going to do harm to themselves or know something about something else, we are required to report it. And so we're required to let people know about it, but we're also required that if a student comes to us and says that they are going to harm themselves, we have to let others know, and we'll bring in the police department, and Susan didn't show up, Chief Vanheimer, but they have a SMART team that will come out and do an assessment of the child. And if they think that the child is in danger, we'll take care of that. But we're going to do that. We're always going to err on the side of the child. I think it's important that everybody know that. You may say, oh, I don't think my child's going to do anything. We're not going to take the responsibility for that. We're always going to err on the side of the child. So we're doing what we can, and we're always open to other ideas of other things that you know as parents that you would like to suggest.
Yeah, I was going to add something. Most of the referrals that come to the counselors are from students' friends. The friends will hear them saying something or writing about something, and they'll come to us. Probably 80 or 90% of the kids who I see who are suicidal have come through social media, or their friends will bring them forward to us. So they're real. And also the teachers, the kids will be writing something in an English class, for instance, write about depression, and they will bring that student to us also.
Yeah. We're all working together as a team.
Well, I think this is a nice place to end our official Q&A. Thank you to all of you who stayed a little bit late. Again, our panel, I'd love to give them a round of applause. We're very fortunate to have this level of expertise all in one room. And then I'd like to thank our organizers of the event. Angela, would you and your team like to just come up briefly? A lot of work went into putting this together, and they did a fabulous job.
Actually, Karen, Dr. Lai is very kind of her words. She's actually the one that put this all together. Thank you very much. Thank you. Just thank everyone for being here. We have more information in the back. Our panelists are going to be staying around for a few minutes. If you have maybe individual questions you'd like to ask them. And I know Dr. Wong and Ms. Sorensen has their information in the back as well. So thank you very much. Let this be a beginning to be able to have a conversation with your family, with your kids, or among parents and family members. And thank you for being here. Thank you.